Hey, what's up, friends? Grant Baldwin here. Welcome back to the Speaker Lab podcast. Hey, I'm excited. We are in person today. We were just talking about, I don't know that we've done this, or I don't know that I've done this before.
We're in the basement of a house in Nashville, recording this at a studio.
We might be murdered walking in here.
Yeah.
And,
but this is really cool. And here, at least we're in the safe room.
So far, so good. If it all hits the fan out there, we would never know. We were down here in the dungeon.
Yeah, they would never see this if something went down, though. So
true.
If you're seeing this or listening to it, we're okay.
We're good. We're going to make it. Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. I feel like I'm trying to remember how we met or how we got connected. I mean, I feel like it's been maybe a decade, close to it. We've been on each other's shows before, and so we were planning on recording this virtually. You happened to be in town, and said, "Hey, let's get together in person." And this is gonna be really fun.
Man. I'm excited to chat. We're gonna talk about a lot of different things, but I do want to thank you publicly because there was a particular moment in time that you helped me on a presentation that was about to happen.
Yeah,
and this was at FinCon 2015, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And your ideas are so good, man. Just so if you're listening to this, maybe you're a first-time listener, I'm just gonna tell you to subscribe now because this man has the goods.
Thanks, man. Well, we got a variety of topics we're going to cover and talk about today. One, let's kind of start with here is you do a variety of different things, but speaking is still part of your business. So how do you kind of think through, like, how does speaking fit into the mix of all the different things that you have going? Because there's people who are watching, listening, who all they want to do is speak. They want to speak full time, and that's the whole thing. And for you, you're like, you'd consider yourself a speaker. It's an important part of the business, but it's kind of a small fraction of just how you allot your time. So how do you see speaking fitting into what you're doing today?
Yeah, speaking to me is very important because I love being on stage and teaching in that way. Even though I'm deathly afraid of it and I still get nervous and want to throw up right before it happens, I just love the art and the craft of it. Being able to hold attention and teach and also add my little jokes and my personality in there. It just is like I'm performing in the band again, in marching band, right? You prep for something, you're in front of an audience, and hopefully you've made an impact and people can then talk about it. And, maybe you might get hired for another one later. And that's so fun. But I used to speak a lot more. So pre-pandemic, I used to speak once or twice a month.
Yep.
And the main reason back then was I was getting my name out there. I wanted my name out there. I wanted high authority. I wanted to be on all the stages. I wanted to sell more of my books, those kinds of things. Then the pandemic happened and everything slowed down. And my wife and I had a pretty long chat about what life was going to look like when the pandemic was over. Am I going to go back on the road and speak? And I wasn't on the road all the time like some people who, are on the road all the time.
Yep.
But it was still time away from family. It was still time away from my growing kids. And I decided during the pandemic, my wife and I both, that it just made sense to do the ones that were maybe more local and then maybe once or twice a year elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I've been still speaking at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego every single year. And every once in a while, I'll get invited to go to a talk in Nashville or Seattle or wherever and just do my thing and just do it more for the enjoyment and the pleasure now versus the needing to do it to get my name out there. This may change. I have a book coming out in 2025, and of course, a part of the book selling process and authority building is getting on stages, and so things might change. But and the kids are a little older now. They're spending less time with us because it's their choice now.
Right.
So we'll see, but I still love it and I still enjoy it. I still take it seriously when I have the opportunity to get up in front of a crowd.
So whenever you're doing a lot of gigs, then it's a lot easier to just I've got one or two different talks that I do, and I'm doing those enough that they're fairly fresh in my mind, and I can tweak a few little things.
Well, I didn't know that at first, that you could
because I remember for a little while, like, you were doing, like, every single talk was like from scratch, brand new, right?
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought, okay, so I spoke, I got good reviews, the conference directors would chat, and then I'd get invited to other ones, and I'd say, sure, what do you want me to talk about? I'll talk about anything.
Right.
And they're like, okay, can you create a presentation about this? And then another one came by, I created another one, and eventually I had, I think, 12 to 15 completely unique talks. And then I went to an event which was 4 speakers at one point, and they were like, you need your signature talk to be perfect. And I was like, what is a signature talk? Like, I have 12 of them. How I need to work on all of them? They're like, you have 12 of them? What are you doing? This is when I learned about the power of having, your couple signature talks that you can really focus on, really hone in on that storytelling and just begin to understand how to then sell your talk to other people and just kind of run through the same one, which is so much easier.
Totally.
And I've since done the Superfans talk, which you may have seen me talk about before, dozens of times now. That's the one that most people hire me for when I do speak, and it's so much easier, and I can make it better every time. 1% improvement every time, and it just stacks. And my wife, who is featured in that talk, is like, "You're still giving that talk?" Because I talk about the Backstreet Boys and her fandom for the Backstreet Boys in there, and she's like, "You owe me so much from me telling you my story about the Backstreet Boys," and I do. But yeah, I wish I knew that earlier, because I feel like I not just wasted time. Not that it was a waste. It was a great experience to start from scratch every time and get those reps in. But I felt like I didn't know what I was selling as a speaker. I was just kind of almost customizing almost in a more of a client to client kind of way, where they could just design whatever they want off of me. But
yeah, and especially early on, like you're trying a bunch of things, because whenever you're creating a new talk, especially, you're making an educated guess. Like, I think this will work. I think this makes sense. I think this is funny. I think this will resonate. But you don't know until you get up and you're getting that real-time feedback, which is one of the great things about speaking that's different from like writing a book, because when the new book comes out, what's the title of the new book so we can prep for it?
Lean Learning: How to Achieve More by Learning Less.
Lean Learning: Achieve More by Learning Less. Okay, all right. Just a little teaser there. Open that loop.
Thank you.
And so whenever when you write the book and the book comes out, it's done. Like, you can't do anything to like, let me go back and tweak this sentence and this phrasing. But when you give a talk and you're watching that real-time feedback, like, it's a lot easier to adjust and say, okay, when I tell it again next week or next month, I'm going to do this or that differently. So I know recently that you gave a presentation, gave a new keynote, and you mentioned like incorporating AI. I'm kind of curious what you did with this.
I just sat down and had AI deliver the whole presentation for me. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what happened. Okay. No, I didn't do that. In the world of AI, it's important to still bring out your personality. And I think this is where those who do bring out their personality are going to in fact stand out more, because everything else is just becoming so commoditized now. Anyway, I had a talk at Social Media Marketing World, and it was a difficult topic because at Social Media Marketing World, especially even now, short form video is very popular. Right? TikToks, Reels, Shorts. I was asked to come and speak on stage and deliver a brand new talk about long form video. There were 6 other presenters at this event talking about short form video. I was the only one talking about why long form was still powerful and still really the top choice, in my opinion, because the YouTube channels that I have, including my new Pokemon one, it's all longs. It's all longs, and it's doing really, really well. So they wanted me to come on stage. And so I used AI to brainstorm against. I use AI as a partner in collaboration when trying to be creative. And I really tried to hone in on a metaphor. And metaphors, as you know as a speaker, are an incredible way to get a point across or teach something or make an impact with a point, because it just somehow, with something unrelated, makes the thing more relatable. And so I was brainstorming with AI for a couple hours on just the perfect metaphor for long form video versus short form video. And I came up with this. Short form video is like handing out Halloween candy, right? You have people come into your house, you hand out candy, they move on to the next one. That's just people swiping, and when they move on to the next house, they kind of forgot about you already, right? You just need the giant Snicker bar in order to be remembered later, and that's very difficult to do. Whereas long-form content is like you're seating people at a restaurant and you're the chef, and you get to help them with an experience. They get to bring their friends and have conversations, and then that is an experience that they will remember, that they talk about later, that they want to bring their friends back to the restaurant. They want to come back and try the other things on the menu later. So I positioned the entire presentation around this idea of Halloween candy. I even had brainstormed, because I had actually done this at another presentation at one point, using actual candy to kind of demonstrate this, but I decided not to do that. But you can see how this metaphor then shapes the presentation and determines, okay, well, what do I put on the slides during this time to enhance this? And this hit so well that people came up to me afterwards and were like, I'm tired of handing out Halloween candy. I feel like I'm being forced to offer Halloween candy all the time. I'm going to make my own restaurant now with my content. And it hit really, really well. I didn't tell people it was AI then.
So to clarify, like, this is AI, like that. So you kind of workshop with AI, which again sounds crazy, but like that's the way it works, is kind of going back and forth there. And ultimately AI kind of spits out this metaphor, and you're like, ding, that's it. Yeah.
So I use it because I only know what I know, and I can only make so many connections in my brain at once, but AI is really good at that. It's calculated and quick. So I don't just copy paste from AI. I think that's where a lot of people are struggling. They'll take AI, ChatGPT, or Claude and say, script a presentation for me about this, and it's like boom, it's done, and now you can just do it. That's I don't believe that that's what should be happening.
Right.
But to use it as a brainstorming tool has been tremendous, and I do that on my podcast episodes now, my blogs, my courses, all this kind of stuff. AI is helping me in that way. So just food for thought for those of you.
And like the long form, short form analogy example that you're kind of thinking through, give us an idea, like what kind of prompts are you putting in there? Because ultimately, like I think a lot of people who, whether you're familiar with AI or you're still kind of like, I dabble with it a time or two, and they're going like, you get to the blank box and you're just trying to figure out like, what do I type?
Yeah.
And so knowing like, okay, I want to get to that. That's the destination of getting to some type of metaphor and analogy. How much are you typing in? What are you kind of typing in? Well, what are some of like the general prompts? Because it's also not just like Google where I type in one thing and I get my answer. It's kind of like a dialogue.
It is a dialogue. It's
so
exactly
like how are you kind of like, what are some of the prompts for whatever you can best recall of walking us through that?
Yeah, I mean, I could retrieve it. I don't have my computer with me, but I think it's not as hard as many people make it out to be, but the prompt that you include is really important. You need to give context, right? You can't just say like, write me a metaphor about long form video and short form video, right? I told and almost trained ChatGPT on who I was speaking in front of, my thoughts about short form, and then also my thoughts about long form and why I valued that more. And through that prompt, I asked then, please, I always say please because, you know, it might turn into an overlord.
You don't want
it
to backfire.
Yeah, I'm like, you never said please before.
That guy was really polite.
I always say please to ChatGPT. So I think I said like, please give me 10 different metaphors that equate to what I just shared.
Yeah.
And it all comes out. If I don't vibe with any of them, 10 more. And I can redirect it. 10 more, but make it a little bit more relatable, right? Or make it something that you might see every day, right? However you want to do that. And eventually you'll find and come across that one idea that changes everything. Just like when you and I worked together, right? It almost felt like you were my AI when we were at FinCon in 2015 and we were in the room together and I was telling the story about a homeless guy in Berkeley.
I still remember the cup and the change.
Yeah, the cup and the change, man. That was us brainstorming and you coming up with that singular idea that kind of became the memorable moment for that presentation.
Yeah. I love the idea, and I heard this recently on another podcast, and they were talking about how AI has almost become like their creative partner and kind of almost creative director of just kind of, they were working, I think, on a movie script and just kind of workshopping and said, whereas and they said that kind of an inspiration struck them and like late at night, you know, and whereas like all the people I would normally chat with on this, they had all gone to bed and, you know, but I can fire up my computer and we can riff on this and we can workshop on this. And you know, I'm not interacting with a person, I'm interacting with a machine who's not going to be emotional, who's just going to be very quick and succinct and to the point. And he said, you know, all of a sudden, I have a couple pages of this script that would have taken weeks and weeks and weeks of back and forth and aligning schedules and, oh, I sent it to you. Did you get it? Oh, give me a second, or I'm busy, or I'm out of town. And it's like, no, I did this in a couple of hours with a thing that had maybe as more creativity than I or another person could have had on my own. So I think oftentimes, like when we're working on a talk or content just in general in whatever format, like we just don't think as a new default of like, let's fire up my creative partner on this and see what they have to say.
And then that becomes your starting point, the point after you are working with that partner instead of you trying to come up with that stuff from scratch, right? Which is pretty cool. Now, many people are taking this to the next level with where ChatGPT 4.0 is and where, you know, 5 and 6 and I don't know, it's just going to keep getting crazier and crazier. But you can actually fire on your camera on your computer and have it watch you give a presentation. And prior to this, you would train ChatGPT and say, you are a marketing director at a Fortune 500 company. You are sitting in the audience of a presentation, and your goals are to help, get your brand out there more in this internet age. You will be watching me give a presentation, and my intro, I want you to tell me what your initial reaction is to the hook. And if you feel like, as a marketing director at a corporation, you would be intrigued to continue to stay engaged in this presentation, go. And then the camera's on watching you, and then you finish, and then you can tell it, and you can even do this all over voice. Please give me feedback on my intro, and please offer 3 suggestions on ways that I can make it more engaging for you.
Yeah.
And then it'll tell you.
That's wild. I didn't know that. That's crazy. And I think that that's another good example of where how AI is becoming better and better. Because I remember last year I was at a conference, and I remember I got to the conference late, and I saw someone in the hall, and I knew there was a big name person that was speaking or just finished speaking in this main event. And I said, hey, how were they? What would they have to say? And they said it sounded like they went into ChatGPT and typed, write me a motivational speech, and that's the speech they gave. And so it just comes across kind of hokey. And so like when what you're describing, like don't defer everything over to ChatGPT and say like, write me a good talk on marketing or leadership or motivation or inspiration or whatever. I said, no, like use it as a collaborator and a partner in coming up with ideas and kind of brainstorming and riffing on what it could be.
Yes, exactly.
Let's shift gears for a second. So you have been on the side of speaker for a long time, and you've put on a couple of events before. Recently, you had a massive event we haven't really had a chance to talk about.
No.
This was like a big event. So let's give some context here. You've always been kind of known as the smart passive income guy, which we may, if we have time, we'll get to. But then I remember a couple years ago, I don't know how many years it's been now, but you got super into Pokemon, which I know squat about. But
do you know what Pikachu is?
I don't know any of it. Okay. No clue whatsoever.
No clue
so I don't need your judgment right now. But nonetheless, I remember that you started this as kind of just like a little, not even like as a side hustle. It's just kind of like a hobby, a fun thing with your son. And my view of it is it's become way bigger than what you ever anticipated. And so you have the YouTube channel that has blown up. All of a sudden you became like a real go-to person in the Pokemon space. And so it all led to you hosting a conference, and this wasn't like a small little meet and greet.
No.
How many people did you have at this event?
This was our second year running it in Orlando, and I think we had 3,700 people, Pokemon nerds from all around the world, including Australia, the UK, Singapore, show up, vendors, including brands like eBay, and if you're a collector, PSA, CGC, all these big companies in the collector space are there, and we just had a fun 2.5 days, and it just felt like camp with all these Pokemon nerds together.
How many people did you have last year at it?
2,500 in Anaheim.
So that's 2,500 and 3,700 people.
Yeah, 2,500 for a first-year event from somebody who is brand new to a space, only 2 years into it, knowing nothing about Pokemon beforehand. Because I didn't grow up with Pokemon. A lot of people assume that. I grew up playing Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
I was a little older when Pokemon came out, so I always thought Pokemon were for like the little kids who didn't know how to play Magic.
Yeah.
Yet now here I am collecting and a Pokemon YouTuber, a Pokatuber as we call it.
And how, like for context here, like how many subs does your YouTube channel have?
We just crossed 895,000 subs, and we'll probably hit 1 million by the end of the year. And this is only after 3.5 years of work. It's been, and bottom line, it's more profitable than SPI right now because it's crazy. A very lean team with just an editor and a Discord mod, and like, I mean, just we had a video that we published to give you an idea of what these videos are like. It published in the beginning of 2022, and it was a challenge. I had 48 hours to complete an entire set of Pokemon. These sets have hundreds of cards, and I was at a convention. And so I was going around trying to find all these cards and trade for them and stuff, and I ended up completing the thing like right at the end, and it was very emotional. In fact, I cried at the end of this video, and people were commenting like, I'm not even into Pokemon, and I cried at the end. Like, this is insane, because it's all about storytelling, just as you know. I mean, I'm the professional storyteller in the space. That's that's the value that I was able to bring to a space that's been here for a decade plus, with other creators and other YouTubers who've been doing it for a very long time, and they just open packed and they talk about the prices and all this stuff. I'm bringing story into it. Anyway, this video has 12 million views and has generated $70,000 in ad revenue. One single video. From a 48-hour challenge of a grown man collecting cardboard that has some shiny characters on it.
That's insane.
And it's been incredibly fun. In 2019, I published a book called Superfans, and I launched that book at my first event, FlynnCon, in San Diego. We had 500 people there, and that, to me, was huge.
Yeah.
And in that book, and I feel like it was a little ahead of its time, but it's perfect now because right now community is more important than ever.
Yeah.
And so this book is here to teach you how to build community and build super fans, because when you build super fans, those people become your marketing engine, and we'll talk about your brand and stuff. One of the chapters is specifically about bringing your community together.
Yeah.
How oftentimes in these communities and in these businesses that we're in, our audiences almost feel weird to other people because they don't know the language. They don't understand what's going on. Even in the entrepreneurial space, we connect with other entrepreneurs. We share the same language. But I mean, I talk business to my wife. She's like, what?
Yeah.
And so, this is why I seek other people in business so we can talk shop, right?
Yeah.
But to everybody else, we're weird. Same thing in the Pokemon space. And a lot of times these people who grew up with Pokemon were bullied. They were ostracized. They were just not cool. To provide a safe space for them to come together as a community and be weird together, to feel welcome, to share the same language, no matter age, no matter gender, no matter anything, to share this common thing we have called Pokemon together it's just been amazing. So I built this event. This is the first event of its kind. There are collectible and Pokemon events that are out there. There are ones that surround themselves around the competition, because it's a trading card game. I don't play the game, and neither do a lot of other people who just collect it for fun. And there's a lot of events out there that are just giant halls that people buy, sell, and trade in, right? Those are just trading conventions. But there was no event that had the same feel that I get when I go to FinCon. There was no event that had the same feel that I get when I went to Chris Ducker's Upreneur conference. Those ones where people feel like they're a part of the community. So I wanted to build that. And I just structured it based on an entrepreneurial event, like Podcast Movement or the same ones. In fact, I partnered with the Podcast Movement people. Dan Franks and that crew over there are just incredible. So they're doing all the operations and stuff. I just bring the talent and the programming. But a business event will have, just like the ones that most of you speak at, will have keynotes and panels and breakout sessions. Well, let's structure it the same way. But we're not going to call it a keynote. We're going to call it the opening show. And we're going to feature not speakers, but the other Pokemon YouTubers that are in the space, myself and all the other bigger, there's a few with millions of subscribers who flew out, and I didn't even have to pay them. They wanted to come because they didn't have a chance ever to meet other people in their space. So I'm providing a value to even the bigger speakers by helping them meet each other and meet their fans and create content while they're there, and deal with the sponsors and get sponsored. So that was our positioning. We made the creators the hero of the story, and so it almost in a way took shape like VidCon does, where all these bigger YouTubers come and their fans come and they kind of cross-pollinate and meet each other. We structured it in the same way. We had panels, but instead of panels where people are just talking about topics, they're ripping packs. They're opening them and getting excited about their hits. There's cameras on the ceiling looking down to look at their cards, just like people would see on YouTube. And the crowds are just swarmed around these tables of people opening cards. Wild. So to bring that YouTube experience to life has been incredible. And we've had people come up to us and say, this is the most important event that's ever been around in this space, because they see the new generation of collectors coming in. And then the people being nostalgic who are a little bit older, who spent their allowance on Pokemon, but now have a lot more income, real money to spend on these Pokemon cards, and they spend, oh my gosh,
that's wild, man.
So we have a vending area as well, and these vendors will say like, man, I've never had so much volume, and we're doing something special. So hosting an event is hard.
So let's talk a little bit about from a speaking standpoint, where it's one thing if you go to some conference where they have one or two they have an opening keynote and a closing keynote and maybe a couple workshops in between there. But for something like that where you have 3,700 people, my assumption is you probably have several dozen speakers, a mix of like main stage and workshops and panels and all of the above there. And so
60
different speakers.
We call them featured creators.
How many of those? All right, a variety of questions here. How many of those did you pay? How many of those did you not pay?
Paid just a couple because they were coming from all the way on the other side of the world.
Okay,
but we eventually want to pay them because they're putting work in.
But at the same time, yes, but at the same time, you kind of touched on this earlier. This is not to discount you or anything, but you're also providing value to them. So they may, if they're growing their channel, or if they have some type of product or service that they're offering,
100%.
Getting in front of your audience.
That's how I sold it to them.
Absolutely, that's still valuable, right? So it may not come in the form of a check, but in fact, what they may get from being at the event as a speaker may be way more valuable than what you're going to pay them.
And the fact that their friends are going to be there.
Totally.
Right? Hey, you're going to be left out if you don't come, right? And I know from a speaker's perspective how valuable it is to be in the green room with other speakers and to share ideas behind the stage and meet some other speakers in that room. So a lot of the cross pollination is really key. So yeah.
So whenever you're going like, okay, I'm looking at a blank slate here. I got 60 slots that I got to fill with speakers, and I'm looking for a mix of people who may provide content, who may not be as well known, but they really know their stuff, and other people who are going to be, maybe it's not like they're bad speakers, but I'm not necessarily hiring them because they're a speaker. I know I'm going to put butts in seats by having them on the ticket and the marquee and the sales page. So how are you kind of thinking about the mix of that? So for someone who's going like, whether they're going to have their own event someday, but more than likely people who are going like, okay, I want to be a speaker at that event, whether it's, a Pokemon event or some leadership conference, or I want to get in with some corporation, and they're looking for 60 speakers all over, the different types of speakers. What are you looking for in that? And why did you determine like, these are the 60 that I chose, and like, here's a bunch of others that I didn't choose? Like, what was the criteria?
Well, I think we did it a little differently than a lot of these business conferences where I was looking for specific people. I was just looking for any creators who wanted to come and participate and show up, because we would then put them on a stage somewhere. The bigger names would be on the main stage, and we'd do more of a talk show style thing. So they were mostly panels in that way. We didn't have any other speakers who came in and just like ran the show on their own, although we will be changing that. Actually, no, that's not true. We had Real Breaking Nate, who has nearly 2 million subs. He came up and hosted and emceed a Q&A and all these other things. But we also put some of the panels in the expo hall where a lot of the buying, selling, and trading was happening, because we wanted traffic to go in there for the vendors. So that's where the packs were being open. And so even smaller creators with just a couple hundred subs felt like they were getting recognized, and they actually promoted the event even more. And even though they only have a few hundred subs, those subs are loyal. Right? They're watching them live every week, and that's the person they want to meet. So they actually come to the event, and collectively, they probably sold more tickets than the big names did by featuring those smaller creators. We even had one of the creators, Powder TCG, who told me a story that when he showed his mom that he was on the website for Card Party.
So the name of it? Card Party?
Card Party, Card.party is the website. It was like such a validating moment that, like, yes, this Pokemon stuff isn't a waste of time. It was this Indian guy with a very traditional mom and dad who were like, what are you doing this for? It's not going to lead to anything. Having him on the website made them think twice about that, which was pretty cool. So by providing value to the other creators in the space, they then, law of reciprocity, they wanted to come and help support as much as possible. I mean, some of them are in it for life now and, wanting to help out and be a part of it. But the programming is the most difficult part. We had a spreadsheet of all the time slots and everything. We're just like, okay, who goes where and what are they talking about, or what are they doing? And it's like a puzzle. Plus, in the space, like any other space, there's like, okay, well, these two people can't be in the same room together at the same time, so we got to know that, and that's a part of just being a part of the community. Is knowing those relationships and trying to make sure like enemies are not on the stage at the same time, which is silly. Yes, there is Pokemon drama. In fact, there are YouTube channels dedicated to Pokemon community drama. Like that's what they talk about. It's ridiculous. They call it high school, but it's literally just any group, really. But yeah, we had a great time. We had a lot of fun. We pre-sold a number of tickets for next year. We're doing 2 next year, one in Tampa and another one in the Pacific Northwest in October. And it's becoming this almost camp-like experience that people can look forward to every year, which is amazing. And because of that, and because it's proven now after 2 years, the sponsors are getting interested and they're starting to open up their wallets a little bit more, which is great because they're seeing just how valuable this is. So it's been really neat and fun, and to get into a brand new space like Pokemon and show up and provide value in this way, I've gotten nothing but love and support back. And so we've gotten this incredible reputation in the space now, even though I was brand new. That being said, when I first started, there were gatekeepers. There were people like, what are you doing here? Why are you trying to do this? And like, who are you to even do this? And I just, just kept going and kept hitting that hammer across the value wall, and eventually it broke and people saw what I was actually here for, which is amazing. I even have a relationship with Pokemon International now. They invited me out to Japan last year to go to Worlds.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just, and we're just getting started.
Yeah. So whenever, let's say someone is looking at your type of conference, again, whether it's Pokemon or whatever it may be, and going like, I would love to speak at something like that. My assumption would be that you have hundreds and hundreds of people who are reaching out through various means
Yeah.
to get on your radar. And my assumption again is that it's not just you who's making a speaker decision. There's probably, a committee or some collection of people who are
Yes.
kind of involved in this. And some people you're like, hey, I absolutely want a vote on this. And some people are like, I don't have a strong opinion on this. So for someone who's just saying, again, whether it's Pokemon or whatever, just going like, I would love to speak at big XYZ conference. What could people do to get on your radar to even be considered as a speaker?
Yes, I'll actually use a specific example. There was a guy who showed up this year, Beard Pokemon. He's a big beard. That's his brand. Who came up to me at this event this past year and was like, hey, Pat, I'm here at this event. I had emailed you before, but you didn't respond. I know you're busy, which I am. I said, I just wanted to come and experience the event and show you that I'm here. And if you need any help next year, I want to be a part of it in any which way. I just wanted to get on your radar, but I'm just here to enjoy and be a part of this so I can see how I can provide even more value next year for you. And that was amazing, right? Because he showed up to the event to experience it first. And then we've already talked about next year getting him involved a little bit more. And that's the way to do it. You go to an event, you understand who the decision makers are, you understand the vibe of the community, and then see the kinds of things that you have, the superpowers that you have that you can then provide to that particular audience.
Yeah.
That's how I've done it at several events. I went to those events first, gotten to know people, did what I could to even promote the event, to share it on social media, the fact that I was there, that I loved it, and then reach out to those people later, knowing that I've already provided some value there by not me being there, but by me showing it, showing that I was there and showing off how awesome the event was, which then allows for that conversation to at least start. 80% of the talks that I've done have been a result of relationships that have been built, not through a normal application process.
Yeah.
Even my first talk, FinCon in Schaumburg, Illinois in 2011,
Yeah.
PT and I had a relationship, and he reached out to me because he needed help, and I was always saying no because I was deathly afraid, but he encouraged me and gave me what I needed to have my first talk ever, which started this whole run. So,
yeah. So even like looking at the 60 speakers that you hired, how many of them came through kind of the Steve Martin phrase of like being so good that they can't ignore you and going, you're proactively reaching out to them, versus how many people were more, they reached out to you or fill out an application or kind of jump through some hoops there? Like what was that? You remember like roughly what that breakdown was?
I think it's 15% of they're just so good we can't ignore them kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would say 60% from there were people that we reached out to and were like, hey, I think you'd be great for this. You're a creator, you're an up-and-comer, we love this. And then I would say the remaining 25% are people who then reached out to us to ask if there was room or anything like this. And we had to turn some people away, or with Beard Pokemon, like come to the event, experience it. The fact that you're there shows us that you're serious about this. You're not just trying to get out there and get exposure for free. And we're learning. I mean, it wasn't perfect, and we had to balance this idea of, okay, well, what is the difference between a featured creator and an attending creator?
Yeah.
Because we still wanted to feature creators who were coming but maybe didn't have time on stage, but we still wanted to recognize them. So then people were like, okay, well, Pat, how many subs do I need to become a featured creator? It doesn't really work like that. Okay, well, then what do I do? Well, just show up and provide value and get to know us. Well, how far do we have to know you before, and it's just like, okay, well, we do need to create some rules or boundaries, but we also know that there's people with thousands of subs who maybe don't deserve to be on the stage because they're not, in line with who it is that we're serving. So I don't know. It's always based on what is the experience that we want the audience to have. That's going to be the number one kind of filter for us. But
one other note there would be like, all right, you have 60 speakers that come in. My assumption would be that whenever you start prepping for next year and you have 2 events next year, there's probably a decent amount that you would bring back, had a great experience with. And there might be a handful you're like, no, kind of a one and done sort of thing. So what made the difference from an event planner's perspective? And again, like in that type of context, a conference of that size, you're wearing a lot of different hats. And you're partly, my assumption would be kind of host and MC and kind of that sort of thing. And so it's not like, you had direct engagement interaction with every single speaker. But again, everything kind of filters back to you, I'm sure, on just kind of some post analysis and debrief. And so there's probably going to be some speakers like, I probably wouldn't have them again. Or on the other side, people who are like, we need to have them every year. Like what from a speaker who's watching, listening, going like, I want to be on the good list and not on the naughty list.
Yeah.
Like, what are things that speakers did on both sides of that equation?
That's a good question. I mean, they showed up and participated. I mean, there's people who showed up and they just kind of went missing. Like, where were you? What did you do? And they were just kind of doing their own thing, and they just were getting the credit for being a creator and not really, pouring into the community like we were hoping. So that's the biggest thing, and that speaks to what I said earlier about how I got on a lot of stages, was going into these events and pouring into the community as much as possible, getting to know people, getting to know other speakers who were on the stage, and just kind of understanding what they might need help with. Always serving first. That's the biggest thing. One thing that was unique that I did because nobody else did it when I spoke was we held a Zoom call with all of the creators prior to the event, for them to all get to know each other first, but then also set expectations of what we expect of them. And that was, number one, if you showed up, great, that tells me something. If you didn't show up, that also tells me something, right? Number two, people who were proactive on like, okay, well, how, asking the right questions about what was happening and how to make the experience even better for attendees. And then also helping the other speakers. There were speakers who were there who were like, okay, guys, like I've done this before. You're going to get mobbed by kids who want your autograph. Here's how you can handle that situation. It's like, hey, that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. I remember those things, and so do conference directors, even little things. So showing up and providing value is going to be the biggest thing, and understanding, again, who the decision makers are. One thing I do when I go to speak at conferences is I get to try to meet the other team members as well, because the teams all have postmortems to talk about the event and what went well, what didn't, who should come back. If you get in good with maybe not the director because they were so busy, or even the decision maker, but with the other team members, the people who were, registering people when they came in, or the ushers who were helping people come in, and you can just tell that they needed some help and you just offered it to them. I mean, it really makes a difference. When I show up at an event, I go to help the attendees have the best time possible. Even if it's somebody else's event, and they see that. It's
so important that like speakers hear that it's so much more than, the 30, 45, 60-minute presentation that you give, but it's more about how you are off stage. And in terms of, I attended other sessions, I sat in, I was a part of the event more, and then I flew in, I did my thing, and I left, and like nobody saw you, they weren't around you, they didn't really interact with you. But also one thing that you kind of alluded to there is just, you're just being good to work with, as far as like, maybe you were awesome on stage, but you were like a jerk to the AV people, or to, other staff, and you kind of like talk down to them or belittled them or something. Like, word travels on that, and people just don't want to, like, there's too many other good speakers and good options out there for someone to say like, wow, but they were so good on stage, we're willing to tolerate that. Like, that's not the case,
No.
So like, just being like a quality human, off stage.
It's
like,
funny how that
a long way.
Works in so many parts of life, just being a quality human. Getting involved with the audience as well, like participating or being in the crowd or staying in the hallways to talk to people. The audience knows that, and they often will get a survey like, hey, which speakers had the most impact on you? Oh, the one that, actually spent time to talk to me. And then your name shows up, and it's just even these little touch points. The team will see that, and they'll notice it, and then they'll, want to invite you back. Or maybe you've already spoken at that event, and you go, hey, do you know any other events that I might be able to speak at? Well, now they're going to actually at least consider that question if, again, you were a decent human being, showed up and, participated.
Anything that maybe people didn't think about that would keep you from bringing someone back? So, I mean, there's obviously like some big blatant stuff of just like, okay, well, this is obviously a big no-no. But anything if someone did, you're like, they may not have even been aware of it, but it was just enough of a red flag that we probably wouldn't have them back.
It's very much a vibe kind of thing. I mean, I do appreciate when, and we don't ask any of our speakers or creators to come and, share that they were at the event. They don't have to promote it at all. And what's really great about that is they all promote it just because they love it so much. But there's a few who maybe will create some videos, create some content at the event, but then not mention the event name. Just like, hey, I'm at this event. I'm like, wait, you just couldn't spend 2 seconds to say card party like in that piece of content. Okay, I see you. I mean, it's not required anyway, but you could share the fact that you're standing on the floor of card party when you're creating this content. because all that does help
Mm-hmm.
the event.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps. Every touch point helps. So credit to where credit is due. I think any sort of drama, I don't like.
Yeah.
Like if you have beef with another speaker and that starts to like make its way, like the conference directors, I'm just like, ugh, like it's literally the thing that is the bane of my existence.
Yeah.
Is this stupid drama in the space, and I have to like now spend extra calories to go, okay, you can't be in the room with this person, and there's all this other stuff. Like, okay, any of that
It's
kind of
stupid.
crap.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
leave that at home. Like show up, be professional,
Yeah.
support your fellow speaker, support the audience that's there, and if there is a problem, then bring it up and let's solve it.
Yeah.
Together.
Let's shift gears one more time. We'll kind of wrap up with this. You mentioned that in 2011 you spoke at your first conference, and it was something that a mutual friend of ours reached out to you about,
Yeah.
and kind of peer pressured you into. And
He totally did.
like you said, speaking has become like a big part of your world, and
Yeah.
something like it's one of your favorite things to do. But you had that same fear, doubt, insecurity that we all do, whether you're giving your first talk or your 1,000th talk, of just like, who am I to stand up on
I
that
still
stage?
get that. I still want to throw up. That imposter syndrome still shows up.
So for the person who's listening, watching, who's going like, I want to be a speaker, I want to do this thing, who am I? Do I even have what it takes? I'll never be as good as fill in the blank. And you had those same feelings. You and I still have those same feelings, especially being friends for all these years, of looking at our own careers and businesses and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what okay, neither of us know what we're doing. Like, I can't believe we're doing this, and we've
Yeah.
been doing this, right? So what would you say to those speakers who are going like, I don't know if I have what it takes, and I've got the more mental hurdles than anything?
Yeah. There's a quote from Henry Ford: "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. What you think is what you become."
Yeah.
So it's really important to surround yourself with other people who will lift you up. Because if you have those kinds of thoughts and you also have other people saying, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, then you're just doomed, right? So surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up. That's going to be number one. And number two, put perfection off of the list of things that you have to worry about, because nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. And I think the idea is get those reps in so you can get better every time. And the longer you wait to start getting your reps in, the longer you're delaying everything that is on the other side of that, all the amazing opportunities and the things that open up and the doors that will fly open once you get on stage. I mean, there's so many cool things that have happened as a result of going to these events and coming on stage, meeting people that you would have never met before. You're always going to feel a little bit of doubt, but that is actually a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
It means you care about this thing. It means you're going to put in the work once you get hired, to make sure that the presentation is going to be as good as it can be at that moment in time. And then the next time you're going to make it even better. So the fact that you're a little scared and worried is a good sign. I would be more worried if you were so confident going into it.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a worry at all, that's actually when I would worry the most. And I once heard that the same part physiologically of your brain fires up when you're nervous and scared about something and when you are excited about something.
Yeah.
It's the same part of the brain that fires up. It's the story you tell yourself about that firing that determines the outcome. Are you going to tell yourself that this is fear, that this is because you're going to be poor on stage, because you're going to forget things, or is it because you're just so damn excited to get on that stage and deliver a talk and provide value? And I think that's the most important thing. Is as long as you know that you have value in mind when you come up on stage or go to these events, then you really have nothing to worry about in terms of the final outcome. You might not be perfect. You might stumble. If you go and watch that first presentation I did, which is up on YouTube from 2011, there were so many things that I could point out. I held a water bottle the entire time that I never drank from. It was like my pacifier.
Your little lovey.
Yeah. And I was pacing back and forth. There were so many things that I could have done better, but I did it. And then I got better on the next one and better on the next one and better on the next one. And I've gotten paid up to $50K for a talk now.
That's awesome.
It can happen.
Congratulations, man.
Thanks,
Hey,
man.
Always good to see you. This is fun doing this in person
Super fun,
as
dude.
well. Pat Flynn, if people want to find out more about you, what you're up to, where can we go?
Smartpassiveincome.com, and we've shifted our business model from courses to focusing on community-powered courses. People have a 3x more opportunity to get a result than when they were doing it on their own, because community is everything these days. And so we've focused our entire business now at SPI on community. So you can see the communities that we have available there. And if you are interested in Pokemon yourself, or maybe have a young one, Deep Pocket Monster is the name of the channel, because Pocket Monster is what Pokemon is short for.
Okay.
Or Pokemon is short for Pocket Monster. And yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Always good to see you, bud.
Appreciate you. That's a wrap, Ryan.
Let's go. Dude, I think we started into it and I was like, dang, I don't know what time we started, but that's probably 35, 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's 40 minutes, I think.
Do you have a timer on it? That was fun.
No, that was super fun.
Dude, we need to do more in person.
Let's see. Ow.
How far is the... I mean, if you and I record for...
Maybe like 35, 45 minutes.
Yeah, we could potentially go pick up Chris.
I was going to say, yeah, I can pick him up. I have a car.
I mean, either way. Dude, that was fun. In person is so much better.
Yeah.
I know, I heard Nathan talking about it, that he's only doing it in person now.
Yeah, and he's got that studio,
Yeah.
which is so cool.
Have you been up there?
I saw it before. I saw it when it was gutted.
Okay.
Yeah, so I haven't seen the final yet, except on the videos.
Well, it's a couple of studios, and it's like 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's like rooms like this, like multiple
That's
rooms
cool.
like this, yeah.
Good for him, man. That's crazy stuff. All right, let me go find That was fun.
Yeah, maybe we put Ryan to sleep.
Yo. Nailed it. One take wonders.
One take, Jake.
One take, Jake.